When Robert Baratheon took the Iron Throne after killing Rhaegar Targaryen at the Trident, the war wasn't truly over. Enemies were hiding, secrets were buried, and alliances were breaking apart. Among the greatest secrets of that war was the baby born to Lyanna Stark at the Tower of Joy, Jon Snow. But in this story, things went differently. Instead of lying to Ned and letting him bring the boy home as his bastard, Robert found out the truth. When he arrived at the Tower of Joy, Lyanna was dying, covered in blood, whispering with her last breath, "His name is Aegon. Promise me. Protect him." Robert stood in silence as Ned carried the baby out, expecting his old friend to order the child's death. But Robert didn't. Something in him broke that day. He had hated Rhaegar, yes, but the baby was innocent. He looked nothing like the silver-haired Targaryens. His eyes were gray like the Starks. He was quiet, wrapped in blood and cloth, just a newborn who didn't know the world hated his name. So Robert made a decision that changed everything. He ordered Jon to be taken to Dragonstone, not to be raised as a Targaryen prince, but to be hidden. No one would suspect that Robert would send the last Targaryen heir to the very place the Targaryens once ruled from. He gave the task to a loyal knight, Sir Eric Fell, a Stormlander who had once served Prince Rhaegar. Quietly, Robert pardoned Sir Eric and gave him a mission: raise the boy in secret, away from court, away from spies, and far from Ned Stark's honor that could never lie well. Dragonstone had been abandoned when Stannis moved to Storm's End. Its halls were empty, dark, and cold, but perfect for hiding a secret. The castle was watched over by a small group of loyal men, and Sir Eric built a quiet life there, raising Jon as his own ward. He never told the boy who he truly was. To Jon, he was just Jon, a quiet boy raised among soldiers and stone dragons, trained with a sword, taught to read old books, and told stories of honor, kings, and the fall of the Targaryens. But the fire still lived inside him. By the time Jon was 10, he was already skilled with a blade. He had questions, though. Why didn't they leave the island? Why were they never visited by lords or ladies? Why did Sir Eric grow tense whenever ravens came with the royal seal? The truth was, Robert had never forgotten about the boy. Every year on the same day, he sent a raven to Dragonstone with one question: is he safe? And every year Sir Eric replied, still safe, still silent, still strong. Meanwhile, Ned Stark mourned his sister in silence. He had promised to keep the boy safe, but Robert had made him swear never to speak of the baby again, not even to Catelyn. The world believed Jon Snow was dead with Lyanna. Ned bore the shame of breaking his promise, but he knew it was the only way to protect the boy. Years passed. Then one day a ship arrived at Dragonstone. It wasn't flying a Baratheon banner. It flew red and gold, the colors of House Lannister. A man named Sir Garron Lannister stepped off the boat, demanding entrance in the name of Queen Cersei. He had heard rumors, he said, of a boy with black hair and stark eyes living on the old Dragon Island. Sir Eric refused to let him pass, but Jon, now 16, watched from the cliffs above. The quiet life was ending. Whispers had started. Secrets don't stay buried forever, especially not in Westeros. Jon didn't know who he really was, but the storm was coming, and he was at its heart. Jon watched the lion-flagged ship from the high cliffs of Dragonstone as it rocked gently in the gray sea. The men on board wore gold-trimmed armor, their boots far too clean for a place like this. Sir Eric stood at the shoreline, his white beard catching the wind, his hand never leaving the hilt of his sword. Jon had never seen his guardian that tense, not even when storms crashed against the castle walls or when pirates dared sail too close. That night the hall was quiet. Only a few torches lit the chamber where Jon sat with Sir Eric. The old knight poured wine, but his hand trembled. Jon had seen this man kill 3 men with a single swing. For him to shake now, it meant danger. "Who was that?" Jon asked, his voice low. Sir Eric didn't answer at first. He took a long sip from the cup and looked into the fire. "Trouble," he said at last. "Sent from the Queen's court. He said he was looking for smugglers, but his eyes were looking too hard at you." Jon's brow furrowed. "Why would the Queen care about me?" Eric stared at him for a long moment. "Because you're not who you think you are." John blinked. For 16 years he'd asked questions, and every time the answer was silence. Until now. "You're not my son," Sir Eric continued, "and you're not a bastard of mine either. You were born at the end of a war that shook the whole realm, a war that ended kings, burned cities, and broke families." John's heart was beating hard now. "Then who am I?" "You're the last son of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, born to Lyanna Stark of Winterfell, hidden by Robert Baratheon himself." John stood so fast his chair tipped over. "That can't be true. Robert hated Rhaegar. He killed him." "Aye," said Sir Eric, "and still he spared you. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was love for Lyanna. I'll never know. But I was there when he gave the order. I took you from your dying mother and brought you here, just like he asked." John couldn't breathe. The fire crackled beside him, but all he felt was cold. His whole life had been a lie. Every lesson, every sword training session, every lonely walk across the beach, he thought he was just a quiet boy from nowhere, a nobody. Now he was being told he was born a prince of the very family the realm had sworn to wipe out. He turned away from Eric, gripping the edge of the stone table. "What does the queen want with me?" Eric hesitated. "To finish what Robert never did. If Cersei Lannister learns who you are, truly she'll have your head on a spike before sunrise." John's hands clenched into fists. "Then why tell me now?" "Because there's no more hiding. The ship didn't come by chance. Someone has been whispering. Maybe a raven was caught. Maybe someone on the island has a loose tongue. Doesn't matter now, you need to leave." John turned to him, face pale. "Leave where?" "North," Eric said. "To Winterfell, to Ned Stark. He's your uncle. He'll protect you." John shook his head. "You said he doesn't know." "He doesn't, but he's an honorable man. He'll do what's right, even if it hurts him." John paced the room, mind racing. "So I'm to go to the north and beg for help from a man I've never met, while the queen sends lions to hunt me?" "There's more than just lions coming," Eric said quietly. "There are other things moving. Daenerys Stormborn has crossed the narrow sea. She rides with dragons now. Real ones." John's eyes snapped toward him. "She's your aunt, and she's coming for the throne." The words hit John like thunder. Dragons. The throne. Blood of the dragon. Everything he'd thought was legend was now tied to him by birth. "I never asked for any of this," John whispered. "No one ever does," said Eric. "But the world doesn't care. You were born of fire and war. You can run or you can rise." Suddenly, a loud boom echoed across the hall. The doors to the keep slammed open. One of Eric's men stumbled in, bleeding from the shoulder. "They're coming," he shouted. "Lannister men! They've taken the docks. They're heading for the castle." Eric stood, drew his sword. "John, go now. Take the back path to the sea caves. There's a boat waiting." "I'm not leaving you." "You must. If they find you, everything is lost." John looked at the old knight, his father in all ways but blood, and nodded. Then he turned and ran, down cold hallways, through tunnels carved in Dragonstone, out into the freezing wind. Behind him, Dragonstone began to burn. The smell of smoke chased John down the narrow tunnel like a beast. The hidden path curved beneath Dragonstone, through damp rock and stale air. He could hear faint shouting above, steel clashing, men screaming. The Lannisters had arrived in full force. Dragonstone, once a silent prison of secrets, was now a battlefield. John's heart pounded as he stumbled forward, gripping the torch Sir Eric had pressed into his hand before the chaos. He had no map, only Eric's words echoing in his head. "Follow the tunnel to the sea cave. The boat is there. Don't look back." But John did look back, once. From a crack in the stone wall, he saw the courtyard bathed in fire. Men were fighting. Eric was there, sword drenched in blood, cutting through the intruders like a demon of old tales. The knight who had raised him was giving his life so John could live. John clenched his jaw and turned away. The world had taken enough from him already. His name, his family, now the only father he'd ever known. The tunnel ended at a jagged mouth of stone, opening to the sea. Waves crashed violently below. A rope ladder had been tied to a rock, swaying above a small boat rocking in the dark water. A hooded man waited beside it, "Are you the boy?" he shouted over the wind. John nodded. "Who are you?" "No one," the man replied. "Your friend paid me well to ask no questions. Get in." John climbed down quickly, boots slipping on the wet rope. The moment his feet touched the deck, the man pushed off and began to row hard into the waves. Behind them, Dragonstone faded into a silhouette of smoke and fire. John sat in silence, water spraying across his face, but he didn't care. All he could see in his mind was Sir Eric's last stand, sword flashing in firelight. He didn't know if the old knight was alive. He didn't know if he'd ever see Dragonstone again. But one thing was clear now. He could never go back. The boat took him south, keeping to the rocky coast. For days they traveled quietly, avoiding ports, hugging hidden coves. The hooded man never spoke unless necessary. John didn't mind. His thoughts were too loud anyway. He stared at the sea, wondering what kind of blood flowed through his veins. Targaryen blood, Stark blood, fire, and ice. Two names that didn't belong together, yet somehow made him whole. He thought about dragons. He had read about them in old books. They had vanished from the world, yet now his aunt, Daenerys, was said to ride them. If that was true, if the Targaryen blood had truly awakened, then what did that make him? A rival? A threat? A brother in arms? On the fifth day, the boat reached Blackwater Bay under the cover of night. The shadow of King's Landing rose in the distance. But the man turned west, steering toward a hidden cove near the Rose Road. John stepped onto land for the first time in days, legs weak, heart heavier. "Where now?" the man asked. "North," John said. "Winterfell." The man handed him a pouch of silver. "From your friend. Enough to buy a horse and food. After that, you're on your own." John nodded, tightened his cloak, and began walking. He didn't know the roads. He didn't know who to trust. But he knew one thing. The Queen was hunting him now. Cersei Lannister didn't leave loose ends. And somewhere someone had betrayed Dragonstone. Someone had whispered John's secret. But why now? Why after 16 years? Had Robert finally spoken of him on his deathbed? Or worse, had someone found out through magic, ravens, or blood? Whatever it was, John couldn't wait for the answer. He had to survive first. 2 nights later, he found himself at an inn along the Rose Road. He paid for a hot meal and sat in the corner, hood low, listening. The tavern was loud with gossip. Farmers, traders, soldiers. But one voice caught his attention. "They say the Queen's offering 100 gold dragons for a bastard boy with Stark eyes and black hair." John's hand froze around his cup. "He's a trader's son, or maybe a Targaryen whelp. Either way, if you see him, best turn him in." John stood quietly, finished his drink, and left through the back door. From that moment on, he stopped using his real name. He traveled by night, slept under trees, watched every shadow. He was no longer just John. He was a hunted prince. The North was colder than John remembered. Not just the air, but the people too. After weeks of travel, hiding from Lannister riders and sleeping under open skies, John finally crossed into the lands ruled by House Stark. His heart beat faster as the trees grew taller and the wind sharper. He had imagined this moment his whole life, ever since Sir Eric first whispered tales of Winterfell's stone walls and snow-covered fields. But now that he was here, nothing felt safe. The rumors had reached the north already. Posters nailed to trees. Bounty hunters on horseback. The Queen's bounty had grown. Now 200 gold dragons for the Targaryen bastard in the north. The description was clear. Black hair, gray eyes, a quiet face, about 16. That was enough to paint a target on John's back in every village. He had started going by another name, Jorah Hill, a bastard's name from the Vale. Common enough not to raise eyebrows, dull enough to be forgotten, but as he got closer to Winterfell, he knew he couldn't stay hidden for long. One evening he arrived at a small village on the edge of the Wolfswood. Snow was falling gently, and the fires inside the inn made the windows glow like lanterns. John was exhausted. He had no more silver, no more food. Just a sword, a name he couldn't say, and a secret that could kill him. He stepped inside, hoping only for warmth. That's when he saw him, A tall man sat near the hearth, wrapped in a black cloak, the sigil of the Night's Watch stitched at the shoulder. His face was tired but sharp, and his eyes, deep and hard like cold steel, were fixed on Jon the moment he walked in. Jon tried to turn away, but it was too late. "You," the man said. "What's your name, boy?" Jon hesitated. "Jorah Hill." The man stood, crossed the room in 3 quick steps, and grabbed Jon's arm. Not rough, but firm. Measured. "I've seen 100 boys with fake names, but you carry a blade like a knight and wear a look like a Stark." Jon's heart jumped. "Who are you?" "Benjen Stark, first ranger of the Night's Watch." Jon froze. His mother's brother, Ned Stark's blood. Benjen lowered his voice. "Come with me." "Now." Jon followed, heart pounding. They stepped out into the cold behind the inn, away from eyes and ears. "I knew your mother," Benjen said. "I knew Lyanna better than anyone. You have her eyes." Jon's throat tightened. "You know who I am?" "I didn't. Not until just now. But the look on your face says it all." Jon looked down. "I'm not trying to start a war." Benjen's voice softened. "You already did, just by surviving." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy like snow on the trees. Benjen pulled a flask from his coat, handed it to Jon. "Drink. You look half frozen." Jon drank, the burning liquid warming his chest. "What do I do now?" "You go to Winterfell. Speak to Ned. He needs to see you." "He won't believe me." "Oh, he will, and he'll know it's time." "Time for what?" Benjen looked out into the woods, his breath a cloud. "Time to tell the world what Robert never dared. That Rhaegar's blood lives. That the last dragon never died." Jon shivered, not from cold, but from the weight of it all. "But the Queen, Cersei's mad with power. She's looking for enemies in every shadow. She thinks killing you will end her nightmares." Jon's hands balled into fists. "I won't let her kill me, but I'm not a king. I'm not even a lord." Benjen looked at him then, not like a ranger, but like a Stark. "Neither was your uncle Eddard when he took on the weight of the North, but he carried it, and you must carry yours." Suddenly a whistle rang out through the trees, then another, sharp, high, and close. Benjen turned, face hard. "Riders! Lannister scouts! They've tracked you." "How?" "Someone betrayed your path. They know you're heading north." Jon drew his sword. "I'll fight." Benjen gave a half smile. "Good. You've got fire in you, boy, but not here. Come, we'll cut through the woods. There's a hunter's path to Winterfell. If we run now, we can reach the castle before dawn." Jon didn't hesitate. He followed his uncle into the trees, deeper into the dark. Behind them, red cloaks flickered like flame through the snow. But ahead, just ahead, was Winterfell, and perhaps the truth. By the time Jon saw the towers of Winterfell rising in the distance, his legs were numb and his breath came in clouds of steam. The snow was falling heavier now, thick enough to quiet the world around him. He and Benjen had ridden through the night, taking narrow paths only a true Northman would know. Jon stared at the great gray walls and the steaming godswood beyond them. This was where his mother had grown up. This was where his uncle ruled. This was home, and yet it felt more like walking into a lion's den. Benjen looked at him from the saddle. "You're shaking." "I'm not cold," Jon muttered. "I didn't think so." The gates opened at the sound of Benjen's name, and the black-cloaked ranger rode in without hesitation. Jon followed, hood low. The guards gave him curious looks, but none asked questions. The Night's Watch didn't usually bring guests to Winterfell. Inside the courtyard, stable boys rushed to take their horses. Jon climbed down slowly, legs stiff. His eyes moved across the yard. Soldiers training, servants hauling firewood, the Stark banners flying high. It looked like a painting from one of the books Sir Eric used to read him. And then a voice cut through the air. "Benjen!" Lord Eddard Stark stood at the top of the stairs. Cloaked in fur, with tired eyes and a face carved from stone, he descended slowly. Behind him was Catelyn, her gaze sharp and cautious. Benjen gave a nod. "Brother, I've come from the Wall with someone you need to meet." Ned's eyes fell on Jon. Jon pulled back his hood. For a moment, no one said a word. The wind blew. Somewhere nearby, a raven cawed. Ned's face didn't move, but his eyes, those stark eyes, widened just slightly. Then his voice came low and quiet. "It can't be." Benjen stepped beside him. "It is." Catelyn's face turned pale. "Who is he?" "A boy," Benjen said, "with your sister's eyes." Jon took a step forward. "My name is Jon, but I think my mother called me something else." Ned didn't move. His jaw clenched. His hand tightened at his side. Benjen spoke again. "Robert didn't tell you, did he? He swore you to silence, then kept the truth even from you." Ned looked at Jon. "You were supposed to be dead." "No," Jon said. "I was on Dragonstone, raised in secret." Catelyn's voice was sharp now. "This is madness." "Ned, what is this?" Ned turned slowly. "He's Lyanna's son, Rhaegar's son." The courtyard froze. Even the horses seemed to fall silent. Catelyn took a step back. "A Targaryen? Here?" Jon opened his mouth to speak, but Ned raised a hand. "Come inside now, all of us." They moved quickly through stone halls into the solar. Guards were posted outside. Catelyn stayed back, though her eyes never left Jon. Inside, Ned poured a drink, handed one to Benjen, and sat heavily at the table. "Tell me everything," he said. So Jon did. The Tower of Joy. Lyanna's last words. Robert's strange mercy. Dragonstone. Sir Eric. The fire. The escape. And the bounty on his head. When he finished, Ned looked years older. "I should have known Robert couldn't bury this forever. He hated Rhaegar, but he loved your mother, and guilt makes men do strange things." Jon leaned forward. "I didn't come to take anything. I don't want a throne. I just want to live." Ned stared into his cup. "You may not want it, but others will want it for you, or they'll want you dead to make sure you never rise." Benjen nodded. "Word will reach the north soon. If the Lannisters know he's alive, it won't stop at bounty hunters. They'll send armies." Ned stood. "Then he stays here, in Winterfell. I won't send my sister's son back to be slaughtered." Jon felt a weight lift, but it didn't last. Ned added, "But you must stay hidden. No more wandering, no more names. You are my blood, but the realm cannot know yet." Jon nodded. "I understand." That night, Jon was given a chamber in the old tower. Cold stone walls, a small fire, a wolfskin blanket. He sat at the window, staring out at the godswood, wondering what would come next. He had found safety, but not peace, because outside the world was moving. And in the south, Queen Cersei had already sent a raven to a man who hated Targaryens more than any other. Tywin Lannister. Snow kept falling. It blanketed Winterfell's towers, softened the stone courtyards, and covered Jon's window in thin frost each morning. But no snow could bury the truth now. He was no longer just a quiet boy with a sword and a secret. He was a dragon hidden among wolves, and the wolves were starting to notice. Word had spread faster than Lord Stark could contain. Maybe a guard overheard. Maybe a servant spoke too freely. But Jon began to feel it. The stares, the silences, the way conversations ended the moment he entered a room. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with quiet fear. Lady Catelyn barely spoke to him. The few times they crossed paths, her eyes were like ice. She hadn't spoken a word since that first day in the solar. Not to him, not about him. And worse, some nights he felt someone was watching him, not from inside Winterfell, but beyond it, from the woods, from the hills. He'd catch glimpses, a rider near the edge of the forest, a shadow where there should be none. Even ghosts, the white direwolf Ned had gifted him in secret, began to grow restless. The wolf would snarl at nothing, pace the chamber at night, nose the window, ears twitching. Jon knew what it meant. They were being hunted, and far to the south, in the golden halls of Casterly Rock, the lion stirred. Lord Tywin Lannister held the Queen's letter in his gloved hand, expression carved from stone. "You're certain?" he asked. The maester nodded. "Confirmed, the boy lives. He escaped Dragonstone. Was last seen heading north." Tywin said nothing. He turned to look at the fire, golden light dancing on his face. "A Targaryen," he said finally, voice low and cold. "Hidden under Eddard Stark's roof. How predictable. Honor makes fools of men." Sir Kevan stepped forward. "Should we act? The Queen is demanding action." Tywin's eyes narrowed. "No," the Queen reacts. "I plan." He poured himself a cup of Arbor Gold, slow and thoughtful. "A war is coming, whether now or later, and wars are won with blades or with silence." Kevan tilted his head. "Silence?" Tywin turned. "Send the Black Knife." Even Kevan flinched. "You're sure?" "The boy cannot reach Daenerys. 2 dragons are dangerous. 3 would be war. End it. Quietly." Back in Winterfell, Jon's life had become a prison of stone and shadow. He could not go outside the walls without guards. He trained alone now, by Ned's command. Even the other Stark children, who didn't fully understand, had started to keep their distance. Only Benjen stayed close. "Feel it yet?" he asked one morning, as they practiced sword work in the courtyard. Jon nodded, breath heavy. "Like I'm carrying fire on my back." "That's what being born into a war feels like." Jon dropped his sword. "Do you regret telling me?" Benjen stepped closer, voice low. "Not for a second. The truth belongs to you now, and maybe the realm too. One day." Jon looked down at his hands. They were calloused from years of training, but now they felt heavier, like they were made for more than just swinging blades. That night, Ghost growled again. Jon rose from bed, sword already in hand. The direwolf stood near the door, stiff and snarling. A second later, there was a whisper of movement, so soft it barely made sound. Then silence. Jon pushed the door open slowly, stepping into the cold hallway. Snow had slipped in through a cracked window. The torches burned low. Nothing. Until he saw the body. One of Ned's guards. Throat slit, eyes wide open, still clutching his sword. Ghost growled louder and Jon didn't wait. He ran. Down the hallway, up the stairs, toward the main keep where Ned slept. Whoever did this wasn't here to steal. They were here to kill. Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure stepped out, clad in black, face masked, blade glinting with poison. The Black Knife. Jon barely blocked the strike. Steel met steel in a spark of death. The assassin was fast, trained, silent, merciless. Jon fought desperately, parrying wild swings, feet slipping on cold stone. The Black Knife struck with the precision of a master, but Jon had been trained by a knight who had once served Prince Rhaegar himself. And more than that, Jon was fighting for more than his life. He was fighting for the truth that burned in his blood. With a final cry, Jon drove his sword into the man's chest. The assassin gasped once, then fell. Blood spread across the stone like black ink. Moments later, the hall filled with boots, guards, Benjen, and finally Lord Stark. Jon stood over the body, blood on his blade, chest heaving. Ned looked down at the man's mask, then to Jon. "The game has begun," he said grimly. And Jon knew. He was no longer a secret. He was a threat. The body of the assassin was burned before sunrise. Ned Stark ordered it himself. No tomb for a killer, no name carved into stone. The man had carried no sigil, no coin, no voice. But his blade had been Valyrian steel, and his movements spoke of years in the shadows. A Lannister wouldn't send a sellsword. They'd send silence itself. And silence had failed. Jon sat in the godswood, back against the old weirwood tree, staring at the red leaves swaying in the cold wind. Ghost sat beside him, ever watchful. The direwolf had sensed the killer before the guards. Without him, Jon would be ash by now. He reached over and scratched behind the wolf's ear. "Thank you," he whispered, but he didn't feel grateful. He felt hunted. Footsteps approached. Ned. He didn't speak right away, just stood under the pale branches, watching the face carved into the heart tree. It bled like it wept. "They know you're here," Ned finally said. "They've sent one already. The next won't miss." Jon didn't respond. His hands were dirty from the fight. His sword sat across his lap, cleaned but still heavy. "I thought I could protect you here," Ned continued, voice lower now. "I was wrong. Jon looked up at him. What will you do? Ned looked tired, older than he had days ago. I'm sending you away. Jon's eyes widened. Not to hide, Ned added. To ride. To where? To the wall. Jon blinked. You're sending me to the Night's Watch? No. I'm sending you to speak to someone who owes me his life. Lord Commander Jorah Mormont. He knew your father. He'll protect you. At the wall, even kings can't reach. Jon stood angry now. You're locking me away, just like before. I'm keeping you alive, Ned said firmly, and giving us time, because right now time is all we have. Jon paced, breath fogging in the cold. What about Daenerys? Ned narrowed his eyes. What about her? She's across the sea with dragons. She has Targaryen blood too. Maybe she'll understand. Or maybe she'll see you as a rival, Ned said flatly. Do you think dragons care about family? Jon bit his tongue. He didn't know what he thought, only that he was tired of running, tired of hiding, of names he couldn't say, and histories carved in blood. I'll go to the wall, he said at last, but not to hide. Ned nodded. You'll travel under the banner of House Stark. I'll declare you my nephew, sent to learn the Watch's ways. But not all will believe it, and not all at the wall are loyal. Jon looked down. If I die up there, will it have been worth it? Ned stepped forward, placed a hand on Jon's shoulder. If you live long enough to change what this realm has become, then yes. 3 days later, Jon rode out from Winterfell before dawn. The snow had eased, but the cold was still biting. Benjen rode beside him, leading the small company north. Ghost padded along silently in the trees. Never far. The wall was still many days away, and Jon felt each one in his bones. But something had shifted in him. He no longer felt like a lost boy. He no longer felt like Jon the Bastard, or Jorah Hill, or some shadow of Rhaegar's ghost. He was Jon Snow, the last son of ice and fire, and he had survived the first attempt to erase him. That meant something, but deep in the south, other hands were moving pieces on the board. In King's Landing, Cersei stood over a map, fuming. The Black Knife failed, she hissed. Varys nodded solemnly. I fear so, Your Grace. The boy lives. And the North protects him? It seems so. She turned to Jaime, who leaned against a pillar, expression unreadable. I want the Stark girl wed to Joffrey immediately, Cersei snapped. And I want ravens sent to every corner of the realm. Make Jon Snow a name to fear. Make him a traitor, a dragon pretender, a curse reborn. Jaime frowned. That's a dangerous move. No, she said coldly. A necessary one. She turned back to the map and slammed her hand down on the north. If the wolves protect him, we'll bleed them dry. At the wall, Jon finally saw it. A towering wall of ice stretching into the sky, vast and ancient and terrible. It looked like the end of the world, but for Jon Snow, it was just the beginning. The wall loomed behind him like a frozen god, silent, towering, unmovable. Jon stood at the top of it, wind cutting across his face, the dark forests of the north stretching out forever before him. He had been at Castle Black for 3 weeks now. The men of the Night's Watch treated him with a mix of respect and caution, partly because of the name Stark, partly because they could sense there was something more behind his quiet eyes. Lord Commander Mormont had taken a liking to him quickly, offering him a place beside his table, watching him closely during training. But no one here truly knew who he was, except one. Samwell Tarly, the kind-hearted boy from Horn Hill, had become Jon's closest friend, and 2 nights ago, Jon had told him everything. The truth, the blood, the fire. Sam hadn't laughed, he hadn't run. He'd simply said, "You're more than what they fear, Jon. That's what scares them." Now Jon stared northward, thinking of all he had left behind. Winterfell, Ned, Ghost, who had vanished into the woods 2 days ago, chasing something beyond the trees. And then came the raven, black wings, blood-red eyes, a scroll sealed in gold and wax, bearing the Lannister lion. Mormont read the message aloud in the hall before the senior brothers. His name is Jon Targaryen, born of the dragon, hidden by wolves. He is a threat to the crown, and shall be named traitor. Let no house or brotherhood protect him under penalty of death." The hall had gone quiet. All eyes turned to Jon, some with fear, some with pity, others with hate. Jon stood slowly. His voice did not tremble. "It's true," he said. "My name is Jon. My mother was Lyanna Stark. My father was Rhaegar Targaryen. But I've never sought a throne. I came here for peace." Someone shouted, "There's no peace for dragons." Another voice yelled, "He's no brother of mine." Steel scraped from sheaths. Tension like lightning filled the room. Then Jorah Mormont rose. "Enough," he said. His voice silenced the room. "He may be a Targaryen by blood, but he took no crown. He has served with honor. And until he raises a banner, he is one of us." Jon looked at him. "You'll protect me?" Mormont's eyes were cold. "I'll protect the realm, but you must decide what that means." That night, Jon stood at the top of the wall again, thinking. He could run, flee north, disappear into wild lands, maybe even find Ghost. Or he could return to the south, find Daenerys, reveal the truth, and risk war. But then the horn blew. Once. Riders. Twice. Wildlings. Then, a third time. Jon froze. 3 blasts. The sound rang through his bones. White Walkers. The wall began to stir like a hive. Brothers ran to stations. Swords and torches were grabbed. Mormont barked orders. The long night was no longer legend. It was here. Jon rushed to the edge of the wall, peered into the blackness, and he saw them. Shadows moving in unnatural ways. Glowing blue eyes. Ice cracking under dead feet. They were coming. Jon turned to Mormont. "Send a raven to Winterfell. Tell them the dead walk. Tell them we need every man." Mormont nodded. "And you?" Jon looked out again, a strange calm settling over him. "I was born from fire and raised in ice. If I run now, what was the point of hiding me at all?" He drew his sword. "I fight." Far away in Dragonstone, Daenerys Targaryen stood on black stone with her dragons circling the skies. She held a scroll in her hand, a raven from the north, a name she hadn't seen in years. Jon Targaryen. Her hand trembled slightly. A nephew, or a threat. Behind her, Tyrion Lannister stepped forward. "What will you do?" She stared at the letter, then at the horizon. "I will meet him, if he lives." And back at the wall, as the undead crept closer, Jon Snow, no longer bastard, no longer hidden, lit his sword with fire from a nearby torch. The flames kissed the steel. The wind howled around him. He looked to his brothers, some afraid, some ready. "Tonight," Jon said, "we don't fight for thrones. We fight for the living." Then he charged into the darkness, fire in his hand, ice in his blood. And the war for the dawn began.